Hi everyone, Niall here. Welcome back to the 8020 BIM channel. Today we're going to talk about Revit curtain walling, how to approach it, how to create it initially, and how to manipulate them after they're placed. Curtain walling seems to be a big point of contention for new users. They seem to get caught up in the editing and swapping out of curtain wall items more so than the initial creation. So we're quickly going to breeze through some of the controls on curtain walls so that you can better understand how easy it is to actually manipulate them, and hopefully to avoid some of the foibles that new users seem to get themselves within. So to start, I've placed 3 walls here, okay, and the placement of curtain walls is the exact same as standard walls. So if you press WA to bring up your wall dialog, and in the standard architectural template, you will see that you already have curtain walls loaded into the template. So in the UK standard architectural template, you have curtain wall empty, curtain wall exterior glazing, and curtain wall storefront. And as you can see in the 3D, I've actually already placed 3 of these variations. This is our empty, this is our glazing, and this is our storefront. So the first way to create the set out of the grids for your curtain wall is to manually create them. Okay? So if you go into your architectural dialog, you will have curtain system, curtain grid, and mullion. And the easiest way to start actually setting out your grid is to simply press curtain grid, and you'll get this dialog. You'll get all segments, one segment, or all except picked. Okay, and the way we start introducing the grids is we actually select the boundary. So if we select a horizontal boundary, it'll give you a vertical grid set out, and if you set the vertical boundary, you'll get the horizontal grid. So we're going to place 1 to 2400, and we're just going to place a number ad hoc there for the moment, just to represent very quick grid placements. And as you can see, you can very quickly place grids in a curtain wall, and they're quite easy to place initially. People start to get hung up then on how to edit them, and the editing becomes a little bit trickier. As a default, when you go to try select something on the curtain wall will select the whole wall. So the one thing you really need to know about editing curtain walls is you need a tab cycle. What that means is essentially you go over the object you want to select and you tab till you select it. So in this instance, I want to pick the grid so I can manipulate its location. So I'm hovering over the wall here and it's selecting the full wall. If I tab, it's going to select the curtain panel. If I tab again, then it'll give me the selection. And then we can simply make our edits by using the move tool, using the setup numbers that it gives us, the guide dimensions that it gives us, or simply clicking and dragging. Now, try not to click and drag when you can. Next, we'd want to start introducing the mullions to the system. So if you go up to your mullion dialog here, it'll actually give you your variables. So depending on the template you're using, if you're using the standard architecture template, you will have a number of variables already in place. So in this instance, we're going to select the 30 mil square because it's quite a short one, and you can basically select the full grid line. Okay, so up here it'll give you where to place it, and you can select all grids. You can select one grid at a time, or you can select one small segment of the grid at a time, or you can select the full grid line. So just to confirm that there again, I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to delete that mullion. And let's say I only want to place the mullion in the top part of this. I can go into my mullion dialog, grid line segment, and then only select the segment that I want. Similarly, let's say that I no longer want this intermediate grid. I want to split the grid, or to stop at the horizontal here and start at the horizontal above. You can simply go add remove segments once you've selected the grid, and you can select which ones you want to remove. And now you've got a single large system panel that you can edit. Okay. When you're in the system panels, you start off with your glaze system panels as a standard, but you can actually go in and yet again, the standard architecture template, you will have the options for glazed and solid. Now you can create your own from this as well. So at the moment you can see that we have a solid and we have no material designation on our solid. So we can go in here and we can select aluminium to start, okay? And now we have a solid panel as aluminium, but let's say instead of that we want to use a a different material type as well. So we're going to select our solid, and then we're going to edit type, duplicate, and we're going to call it solid 2. And let's say that we don't want aluminium as our finish, but we want something like, I'm just going to select timber. Twice draft, no, we won't do that. So assuming that we're not actually using something like a cherry, but in this instance we've brought in something that is a more suitable external timber finish, like cedar, burnt cedar or something like that. And then we can have our solid 2, and that's an independent panel again. Okay. We can also edit the dimensions of the panel. So in here you can see that we have a thickness, and the thickness can be very quickly edited. We can set that to 250 if we want. A bit excessive considering we have 30 mil mullion, but we can do that. Alternatively, we can set it to 50, and then we can set the offset value. So we can set the offset value to 20 in this instance, and you will see that the depth is actually extruding from the wall. So when you're selecting the offset value for the glazed panel itself, the negative value will give you a push into the internal of the building, and a positive value will give you an outward offset. So if I set that to -30, you'll see that it's actually going to snap all the way in to the inside line of our known 30 mil depth of our mullion. Okay, so that's how we control the offset of the panels themselves as well. Okay, so that's a very simple way of manually creating a curtain wall system. The other alternative is to kind of set up a series of parameters that the wall then has to follow. So as you can see in the second option here, we don't have any mullions placed. So we're going to go into our edit type, and we're actually going to apply kind of system-wide constraints and parameters to be followed. So we're going to change, at the moment, we have a vertical grid of fixed distance of 1830. So we're going to change that to 1500 and press apply. And immediately you'll see that we get a flex in the offset. In our horizontal grid, we're also going to set our fixed distance to 2400 to match the other walls. We're going to press apply. And as you can see, from the ground up, it's placed the first horizontal grid at 2400. And that's the way curtain walls work, from the ground up, because your first grid is technically at the ground level. Okay. Then you can see that we have our vertical mullions. And in this instance, you can actually just apply a vertical mullion to the full system, and it gives you the variables. So you have your interior vertical mullions, and here we're going to press 50 by 100, and we're going to press apply. And as you can see, our interior verticals have now been assigned. Similarly, our horizontal mullions, we can do the same with. We can go rectangular 50 by 150. And now you've got the interior rectangular. Our border 1, we're going to apply the same. I'm going to press apply, and you'll notice that our border 1 is our right hand boundary on our vertical, and our border 2 is our left hand boundary on our vertical. So that's an important distinction. You have to learn the association between your borders and which side they are on. Yet again, on our horizontal mullions, on our border, we can give it same size, or the incorrect one, as the case may be. And as you see, border 2 is the top, and border 1 is the bottom. And now we've created an automatic curtain wall as such that is controlled by a constraint dialog in the properties and not by manual placement and manipulation of the grids. This isn't to say that you cannot go in the aftermath and manually control some of this information. You can. What you need to do, though, is understand that you've actually assigned the parameters, and you need to disassociate any grid or mullion from that regularized pattern that you've given it, so that you can make the edit. Okay. So in this instance, you can see that, okay, I'm not happy with the placement of this middle grid line, and I want to move it. So straight away, you can see I can't move it. It's saying that it's being pinned. And that pinned element is because I've given it an interval that it has to work to in the parameters. So what I need to do before I make that edit is I actually need to unpin the object, and now I can use things like the dimension criteria to change the setout. Now, in this instance, I've moved that 1800 mil, and 1800 mil seems an appropriate dimension to swap out our curtain system panel with something like a door. So in this instance, we have our glazed panel here. And if we go down into this dialog, you'll see that all we have to replace it with is our glazed and our two solid variants that we were working with earlier. So what we need to do is we need to introduce a new curtain wall panel to this. So if we go into our insert dialog, load family, under your library, depending on what library you're working to, I'm working to the UK metric, you can scroll down and you'll see curtain wall panels. And here you get a whole variety of panels. You get an empty panel, which I am also going to bring in. And then I'm going to go down and select quite a simple double glass door. Okay, so I'm going to select the double glass with the two pull handles, as you can see, and I'm going to select the empty panel as well. And I'm going to press open. So in this instance now, I'm going to select the panel, and I can very quickly go down to the dialog, and you can see now that there's different variations available to swap out that weren't present before I loaded in. We have the glass double door and we have the empty panel. So in this instance, I want to select the glass double door. Now it's worth knowing that when you are going ahead and trying to use this door in your schedules, for your door schedules, this will appear in your door schedule, no problem. But what it'll actually do is it'll give you the dimensions of the grids, not the placement between the mullions. So you may need to create another parameter to be reported that is actually the clear distance between the mullions for the actual door size. So that's just something you need to be aware of if you're scheduling doors from a curtain wall. Similarly, one thing that's often forgotten, and I see it a lot, is the mullion at the base of the door needs to be removed. And now you get a more accurate height. Okay. So we swap that out, and let's say up here we actually do not want a panel here for whatever reason. We can simply go in and select the empty panel, and now you can see that that is just a void. Okay, it's still represented as an object, but there's nothing of value to the object. There's no material assignment or anything about the object. Finally, when we're looking at the initial placement of mullions and curtain wall construction itself, we need to represent the curtain wall in a certain way. And in this instance, the mullions are representative of the structural support system for the large curtain wall panels. And what you need to do is you actually need to assign the nature of the presentation of the mullions so that they know when to start, stop. So basically, it's similar to structural modeling in the sense you could have primary and secondary beams. You'll have primary support mullions and secondary mullions. And in this instance, for example, I can change the join condition here so that the horizontal is constant and it breaks the vertical. So you can do that manually if you wish by just selecting this mullion join toggle. And as you can see, you begin to create the join condition. So in this instance, this join condition makes sense because I want to go ahead and remove that segment of curtain walling. And as before, I want to change out the panel for a glass double door. And then I'm going to select my two bottom mullions. I'm going to unpin them and I'm going to delete them. So now you have an appropriate join condition. As you can see, that join condition is actually changed back on the placement of the door. So I can go back and toggle the mullion join. And now we've got a consistent mullion there for the vertical one to be supported off of. This is not just a manual control in like as an intersection by intersection basis, but this is actually part of the type parameters. So you can go into your edit type, and as you can see, we have a join condition. And here we can see that we can define our join condition. So we can say not defined if we want to manually control each one independently. Or we can go, let's say, to horizontal grid continuous and press apply. And when you zoom in, you can see that now all horizontals on the interior are breaking the verticals. Yet again, we can go back and we can do the opposite of that. We can go vertical grid continuous, and as you can see, the verticals are doing the same. The most common of these is probably going to be border and verticals, because most often the support system is from the ground up. So we're going to use a continuous vertical mullion and press apply. And as you can see, we have continuous vertical mullions now, except for when we gave it the manual condition. It did not override the manual condition that we presented it with. Okay. Another thing about system panels is that we can change them for any wall type, and this is something that people are just not aware of. You can select your system panel, and most people try stick to curtain wall panels that they have imported or created from scratch, but a lot of people don't realize that you can actually give it any wall type either. So it doesn't matter how ridiculous it may be, I can give it a retaining concrete wall there between the panels. So this is actually a really interesting use case, because you can actually have, let's say, a large section of curtain walling that you then just want to break up with a standard wall, but you want to kind of keep the regularization of the pattern. You can introduce some sort of concrete segment and then remove the mullions around it and still maintain a regular grid across the whole thing. So this just gives you a greater level of control again. Outside of that, there's a few other things to just be cognizant of when you're modeling. We can actually create a curtain wall within a standard wall, and we can do this very simply. So in this instance, you're going to look at the storefront, and under the type, you can see that we have automatically embed as an option that's turned on this wall type. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my level 0 here, and I'm going to go into my walls, okay, by pressing WA, and then I'm going to go up and select a large wall, and here I'm going to give it a height of 5,000, and I'm going to draft it just here. Okay, and so I've created a standard wall now. Because this type now, our storefront, has this parameter selected as turned on, we can then draw directly within the footprint of the existing wall with this storefront curtain walling. Okay, and I'm going to set its height to 3,000. And when I draw on the center, you'll see it actually breaks and wraps the existing wall construction around it. So a lot of people try, when they're first trying to get to grips with this, what they do is they draw their initial wall as a standard wall, and then what they'll do is they will actually go ahead and edit the profile of the wall to create a void. And then once they've created the void, they will then go ahead and place a curtain wall to meet the extent of the void. If you have this criteria selected on your breakdown of your type properties to automatically embed, you don't need to do that. And the great thing about that is you keep a relationship between the two walls. That means that the conditions of one affect the conditions of the other. So that is a very, very simple way of embedding and controlling a curtain wall within an existing wall construction. This is brilliant if you have something like a bifold door system or something like that in a domestic use case, or if you have something like just a glazed segment among a typical kind of a Kingspan wall construction in standard construction. Okay. Outside of that, I'm just looking to my notes here. When you're placing, just to go back to the manual segments again, okay? When you are placing your curtain grids, if it let me select them, and your mullions, okay? So I'm going to delete the mullion there, and I'm going to delete the mullion there, okay? So as we said before, we can select single segment, the full segment, or the full wall to place the mullion of choice, okay? But if we need to edit that, there's something that people don't know. Mullions automatically select between the grids, so you only get one segment of the mullion. But there is actually an additional menu to improve the selection criteria of the mullions. If you right-click the mullion, you get select mullions as it's kind of like an additional selection option. And you can basically select all inner mullions, for example. And then you can make a change. So if you're manually trying to control the set out, if you have an irregular pattern on your wall, this gives you a greater speed and efficiency when it comes to swapping out, let's say, the mullion variation. Because you can't necessarily, like in most instances, people would be tabbing to select each mullion just to make the edit, just to swap out the type, which it's just not efficient workflow, and things are going to be missed as well. So that additional selection menu is really, really not known by a lot of people, and it just gives you so many options in terms of selecting and hot swapping the mullion types and the spacings and that kind of thing in your curtain walls. So this has been a very, very brief introduction to the placement of curtain walls. The one last thing I'm going to show you on this is if I go back to my level 0 here, and we have our storefront wall. Again, I'm going to press WA and I'm going to select storefront, and I'm going to go 4000 to match the existing, and I'm going to join center to center. Okay. As you can see, the join on the corner of the walls is disastrous. It doesn't represent correctly. And what we need to do is we need to actually swap this out for a corner mullion profile. So what you can actually do here is you can tab until you select both of your mullions and you unpin them in the vertical plane. Okay? And then you can delete one. And when you select the other, you can then go to your L corner mullion or your quad corner mullion. So there's corner mullions that you can place, okay? And the corner mullions are just as basically a profile that will allow for a clean join between the two. So we can go for a V corner mullion here, as you can see. And what happens is the mullion from one wall actually impacts the set out of the planar glazing on the other side. So you can actually remove one side and just change the other, and it'll still have the effect on the adjoining wall because Revit recognizes them as adjoining walls. And this is how you control that really awkward thing that comes up a lot, the corner presentation of mullions in Revit. So it's a very powerful little tool, and you know, it's just yet again not very well known. So if we go into our 3D space here, you can see that the lower segment has been swapped out for an appropriate mullion profile. More so than another thing that this can be used for is if you actually want to just have the planar glazing join on either side, you can delete entirely if you wish and drag one out to the other, and then you kind of get this rough, but what happens is your actual base mullions don't join properly. So you can actually create a smaller profile that can act almost as if it was just a bead between the two glazed units. So just like a visible silicone bead or something like that. And what will happen then is you'll still get the same join condition. So let's say you just want to put a little 20mm bead in there, and because you created it as a corner mullion, it'll cause the two to join. So you'll cause an overlap in the two. So that's been a quick guide to curtain wall creation and manipulation. It is worth noting that this is a very basic example. You can have multiple curtain wall systems interacting with one another. You can have multiple panel types within the same curtain wall system. And just to give you an example of this, here is a building that my design office recently completed, and it's a manufacturing unit that is part of a greater kind of pharmaceutical complex. And although the manufacturing building itself is quite a rudimentary shape, it was tied into a far more aesthetically pleasing administration building adjacent. So we actually had to match kind of some of the external aesthetic qualities. And the way we did that, even though the shape of the building outline was very basic, was to match the curtain wall system. So as you can see, we have Kingspan irregular curtain walls for the lion's share of the building. And then we actually have, in this area here, we have recessed windows that actually act as curtain wall panels with the flashing profiles already built into the families. Then we have this square Kingspan panel and our planar glazing with an irregularity to the style of it and the amount of light that it let in. And this all tied into a greater kind of architectural theme. So in isolation here, as you can see, it doesn't look the best, but when it ties into the rest of the complex, it looks very well. And these are all standard curtain walls that have been manipulated with new panels and a more controlled manual set out to give us the representation as we see here. So it's not just this very linear and straightforward kind of example that I've given. You can develop this and expand upon this and be creative and mix and match as you need. So that closes this quick guide to curtain walls. If you have any comments or questions, as always, please let me know in the comment box below. As always, if you'd like to see more content like this, like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you on the next one. Thanks, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.